Welcome in to another edition of your weekly lacrosse recap. My name is Dane Stewart, and a reminder, you can catch this both on the Utah Lacrosse Report podcast as well as on KSL Sports Rewind's coverage of lacrosse. We've got a special edition for you today. We told you interviews were going to be coming, and we had an opportunity to catch up with Coach Nick Merrell, the head coach at Olympus, to talk to him about his thoughts and his background in lacrosse and what it's like to be the head coach at Olympus. Please be joined by Nick Merrell, the head coach of the boys Olympus lacrosse team. Coach, thank you so much for the time today.
Thanks, Dane, for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So, Coach, we want to give some insight to some of our listeners around you and your program. Maybe just start off, tell us a little bit about your background in the game. What familiarity did you have with lacrosse before getting into coaching? What was your background, and how'd you end up as the head coach at Olympus?
All right, couple parts here. So when I started playing lacrosse was my freshman year of high school over at West High School. And I got into lacrosse via my brothers, the youngest of three, and they both played and were really successful at the sport. And I was a soccer kid, a basketball and a football kid. And so when I started playing lacrosse, I immediately dumped soccer. I love lacrosse, and I didn't look back. I played my 4 years there. I moved on to the University of Utah and played there, and was lucky to play for some really great coaches up at the U. Had a great experience there. And then I jumped into coaching when I finished playing at the U over at my alma mater. My brother, Corey, was the head coach over at West High School. Also as an assistant coach for one season with him. And then I took over. He stepped down. I took over as the head coach for 2 years. And then I took a 1 year break from that. I did work and stuff like that took me away from the game. And then Coach Matt Duke Rosati took over in 2016, the Olympus program. And that's when I got a call from him, and he said, "Hey man, do you want to coach the offense? Let's meet up and talk about this." And so we met up for lunch, and immediately I jumped on it. You know, the way he sold the program and kind of the vision for where Olympus could be. I was all on board. So I coached the offense for 4 years from 16 to 20, essentially. And then Duke had stepped down. He had a busy life. He's a family man and has a newborn kid a couple years ago. That's a couple years old now. And it just kind of, I applied for the position and I wanted to be the head coach, and took over. My first year was that 2021 year as the head coach, and have been the head coach this is my fourth year.
Duke, we love Duke. Call games with Duke for Utah, and obviously he's back coaching in high school, so it's awesome to have Duke around the game. That's awesome. You've had a lot of success.
It's really good for him to. Sorry to interrupt you. It's really good to see him on the sidelines again. He's really good for the sport. He's one of the better coaches in the state, one of the best coaches in the state. So it's good to see him back on the sidelines. Judge is very lucky.
Yeah, they are. You've had a lot of success, and obviously your playing career, you're playing collegiately, and then obviously in coaching. When you look back on that, what has been one of the critical factors that you attribute as helping you grow in the game as a player and now as a coach?
Ooh, so many good mentors. That's a great question. As a player, playing for Craig Morris, with my head coach at the time, as well as Rick Cladis, there's such different styles of coaches, but I typically take little things from all of the coaches I've played for throughout the years in multiple sports. And, Coach Morris had such a great, trying to think of the word, but he was such a good leader, and he knew how to manage the team and the emotions of the team and steer the ship the right way. And I really always appreciated how steady he was all the time. When it came to Rick Cladis, he was so analytical, and he was such a numbers person. And the way that we run offense, I learned so much of how I have run our offense at Olympus. And now, with Colin Madsen, that so much of that influence came from Rick. And so the mentors as a player that have translated into being a coach, Coach Duke. I learned so much from Coach Duke. He spent some time as a coach at the University of Utah and has a lot of great experience there. And he's just, when you're around Duke, he has such a presence about him too. And so I've tried to take a little bit of those mentors and fuse it all into what I've really liked, as well as just like my style and what's my personality. And that's ultimately how I've kind of become the coach that I am today. And then I've got great assistants around me too that help a lot. And Kelby Aki and Colin Madsen.
I love that you talk about some of what you've taken from some of the coaches and mentors that you've had. How would you maybe define the culture, or what's important? What do you want Olympus lacrosse to be? What do you want it to stand for? What are the foundational principles you try to build in that program?
Yeah, that's another great question. That started in 2016 when Duke took over the program. We wanted to create something that was centered around the symbolism of the hook O. Olympus has a very unique logo, the hook O. And so we came up with one. One was like our thing. And so we created this mantra that one team, one family was what we were all about, what our culture was all about. And it's everybody. It's our players. It's our community. It's our peers, our students in the school and administrators. And I think the players have really embodied that, like truly. It's not lip service for us. It's something we truly care about, is that culture and of being one team and one family all the time. And it doesn't mean that we're perfect. There's always fractures in that, but we always try to uphold that culture. And I think having that as the foundational piece of, we have our core values, over our pillars, like there's structures to this, but that's the foundational piece of our culture and our program and what we're about. And that's bled down into our youth system, and they all put it on their uniforms now. And it's awesome. It's cool to see that connection between our youth and the high school. And we try to run free camps and stuff like that for the youth, and our players at the high school run those and stay connected to the youth. And we bring them out at halftime and do player tunnels for the youth as they're coming out and playing at halftime. And it gives it a feel of, that we're all in this together, and it makes it really, really special. And that's what this program is all about, because it's so much bigger than just the individual player.
Coach, I love that. And it's one of the things, having, being relatively new to the sport, but been in the high school scene for a long time, you can see around your lacrosse culture. I think that emanates off the field, right? Seeing that oneness of your team, and can think about recent teams and just games where we've seen things go well and things not go well, and being able to see that kind of come out. It's cool to be able to hear you talk about, this is what we want to be, and being able to have seen that right over the course of the year. So you're doing a great job instilling that culture and keeping that going. I am curious, when you think about, obviously either your playing career or your coaching career, and be that where you're at now or certain moments, is there anything that you would look back and wish, I wish I did this differently, or I wish I knew this, what I know now, I wish I knew this then? Is there anything that you look back on and think, oh man, I would have loved to have handled that differently?
Ooh, Dane, this is a great question. Of course, there's always things that you could look back and say, I wish we handled this situation differently, or that situation differently. It's easy to do that now. You think about, the first state championship that we were in 2022. That was the Hutton Murphy year and the Cam Rossi year, and Jack Wall McKay. You had so many good players on that team. We lost the game, ended up losing by 1. And we had the lead in the last, minute and a half or so coming out of a timeout. And of course, it's so easy to say, we wish we did this. Kelby Oki is our defensive coordinator, and he and I were talking in that timeout, and, it's, now hindsight, a couple goals going Park City's way, of course we'd be like, yeah, we wish we changed this or that or did this or that. Yeah. But I think at the end of the day, you really can't. You can learn from those situations and move on. But I wouldn't really take anything back, per se, as cliche as that sounds, because it truly has helped us grow as coaches too. Every year that we're doing this is my 8th year at Olympus, 4th as the head coach. It's been a learning experience, and we've grown as coaches a little bit each year. So yes, if I could go back, yeah, knowing what I know, I'd change a couple things, maybe schematically how we did things. But the memories are still overwhelmingly positive, and so I wouldn't really change anything from what we've done.
And I know those are, having covered those games, right? And the one you talked about is like, oh man, It feels like it's right there, and yet it doesn't come to fruition. And Olympus has a long history. I mean, you can look over on the basketball side, right? And it took Matt Barnes a while to get to the top of the mountain, but once he did, that guy doesn't come down, right? And it feels like you guys are right there, where it's like once you get there, set up to be there for quite a while, and that day will come. The reason why I asked that question, because I'm curious, as we think about the game and where it's at now, and you talk about that younger generation, you talk about your youth program. What is maybe something that you would advise younger players? Hey, focus on this, worry about this. I think sometimes you worry about making you want to go on, you want to score a bunch of goals in a youth game, but it's like, hey, focus. What is the one thing you would advise players on working on if they have desires to play this game at a varsity level or even beyond high school?
That's another good question. I think when it comes to youth, at that age, you want to focus on them just having fun. They want to have, you want the kids to fall in love with the sport. And that's what we try to do when we run our youth camps through Olympus, is just make it fun. They don't have to take things. They're still at the rec level. Some of them are starting to get into the club scene a little bit, but making it as fun as possible. And when they fall in love with the game, a lot of the rest of all the other stuff, the putting in the stick work, getting extra shots, watching the game, I think that comes very easily when you have that foundational piece of just like, man, I just can't wait to play. So that would be kind of the first step. But when you're talking about developing everything else, you obviously you'd always talk to them about hitting the wall, always getting out with their buddies, getting reps, finding a way to increase and better their stick skills, because if they can the less they have to worry about their stick and think about catching and throwing, the more they can start to think about the actual X's and O's and what's going on the field, and reading and reacting to scenarios. So that's, obviously the big thing. And then watching the game. We are so lucky that we have the PLL that's coming to Utah now. And we have Division II and Division I lacrosse now in the state. We have great Division MCLA Division I club lacrosse here in the state. And these kids literally have a program that they can watch all the time. That plays high level, great lacrosse. They play connected as, a team of 10 on the field, and there's such good examples. So I would tell a young player that they have to always work on their stick. They always have to fall in love with getting better, a little bit better every single day, and watch the game. You pick up on so much when you just watch better players play the game. And I mean, that's how I was when I was a kid watching basketball play. I loved watching the NBA, and I loved watching Stockton and Malone and Hornacek and the Jazz. And I picked up on so much of the style of how I played basketball just from watching. And so I think that's kind of a lost art, because there's not as much access on TV to our sport, but it's growing and it's getting better. But that's the advice that I would try, tell a young player.
Yeah, that's good. I am curious. You talk about you moved on to play after high school. You've had players from Olympus that have had opportunities to go and play collegiate lacrosse. What is something you would share about recruiting? And what's maybe something that players or parents maybe don't realize that has been important that you've seen some of your players go through as they've been recruited or are looking at opportunities at the next level?
Yeah. The first thing is to get a recruiting profile filled out online, and getting that done. You have to put out some film that you can start emailing to coaches, and that they can start to see some of your highlights. We use the Huddle platform for all of our film, where guys can clip out all of their highlights from our game film. So that's where I would start. But it's really, if somebody wants to play in college, they've got to play. They don't have to, but it helps a ton to play club ball in the summer and to get into the club circuit, get to these tournaments where coaches are recruiting. Most of our players have been seen initially at a lot of these tournaments. So I would say that the club scene is a great way to get your name out there. We also have had players that go to, if they're interested in a particular school, to go to their prospect camp. So if they go to there and attend their prospect camp, they're able to maybe be in front of those coaches playing and showcasing what their skill set is in front of maybe 100 kids instead of a couple hundred kids, So it's a great opportunity to showcase what you have and what you could potentially bring to a program. And then once that builds interest, then those coaches will reach out to myself or any of our assistant coaches, and then maybe ask a couple questions about who this kid is, what his family's all about, what he's all about, how is he as a teammate, and then it just kind of steamrolls from there. But recruiting profile is number one. Getting your highlights up, and then going and putting yourself out there via the club scene and going to prospect camps and individual school camps. Those are all great ways that we instruct our kids to get recruited and go to the schools that they ultimately want to go to. And we're figuring out, new ideas and new ways to help our kids get recruited. And next year we're working on getting to Utah Tech University. We're wanting to reach out to them and do something with their program and do a couple games down there. They could do a campus visit. And so wherever we go, we always want to maybe be checking out the local universities.
Yeah, that's great. What's the thing about being a coach that maybe surprised you, or what's something about being a coach that maybe people wouldn't understand or maybe wouldn't think about, something that's just challenging or maybe something that maybe caught you by surprise, moving it and being a head coach as opposed to a player or an assistant?
I'd probably say the amount of time that it takes. There's so much that goes on off the field that becomes 70% of what you're actually doing versus actually coaching on the field. So when I transitioned into the head coaching role, ordering all the gear and the uniforms, creating a schedule, making sure that we had the coaches hired and making sure that they were certified to coach, and all of the little details of how a program's actually run, meeting with our board and going through all the budget for that year, and the school account versus our SSO, our student supported organization account. I mean, there's so much that goes into this outside of the field. And I think that's what's been kind of alarming. But I've learned, the first year it was challenging, and I just wanted to be on the field, just coaching the guys, just coaching lacrosse and focusing on that.
Yeah.
But as I've kind of gotten into a groove and understood, okay, this time of the year, it's boom, boom, boom. I got to do this and this. And, and then there's a whole social media factor to this. And, it's just kind of evolved over the years, and I've been able to, luckily have a lot of help with everything. And it's become kind of a well-oiled machine with how we do things at Olympus. But that was probably the biggest or most eye-opening thing, coming from just an assistant coach running the offense to taking over the program and running all of those little daily operations.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a pretty consistent answer, if that makes you feel any better. A lot of coaches
Yeah.
like, I didn't realize.
I mean, I know most coaches would say the exact same thing there. So it is what it is. But at the same, token, that like people are like, oh, do you not like it? Like, does it, bother you how much you have to like kind of take away from some of your day to day with your regular job and everything like this? And sometimes I don't love it, of course, but at the same token, I love it. I really do love being a part of this program, and I feel so lucky to be at this school. And we have such great kids that, I mean, it makes it so much more worth it than the work is against. So it's only feel so much, I feel so fortunate to be where we're at.
Yeah. As in my profession, it's great to be able to do something, but it's even better to help someone else do something, right? And I think that's maybe the fruit of a head coach is like, I may not get to spend as much time, in the X's and O's or on the field because I've got to spend more time. But man, helping, Jimmy with that issue so that he can now go out and be his best, like that's just there's something else about being able to help someone else. It's a different kind of fulfillment.
Oh, without a doubt.
Coach,
you have Sorry, I was just going to say you have all of our staff is, they're individuals that are in their early 30s. So they're not, their dads or anything like that have a different dynamic of a relationship with the kid. And so they really feel like they can come to us and ask us, really questions about anything that they might be struggling with. Yeah. And it's most of the time that happens, it's, stuff that's, off the field and has nothing to do with lacrosse. And so it does, we do have the ability to have a pretty big impact that way, which is cool.
Yeah. You talk about, being able to watch the game. Obviously, there's a lot of opportunities here in the state, as you talked about with PLL and the different levels of collegiate lacrosse we have, obviously high school as well. As you think about where the game is, what are your ideas or what are your suggestions as to how we can continue to help grow the game? And be that for parents or players or coaches, media, how can we as a body help grow the game and grow its exposure?
Wow, that is a great question. And I'll speak from kind of our perspective. The way that we've tried to grow the game is really create a big connection between our high school and the youth. So we just feel like if the kids can be excited about watching their hero, so to speak, at their position, play at the high school level and play it at a high level, they get excited, and if the high school kids come down to coach some camps and be involved with running some of their practices. And, that's such a great way to help grow the game, make it exciting. Then they want to call their buddies down the road that might play another sport or might not be playing lacrosse and say, this has been an awesome experience. And, we're fortunate because our youth system is now the second largest youth in the state of Utah. And
oh, wow.
We've got about 85 kids K through 8 that are playing lacrosse, and we are always around 120, 130. And, I think that's been a huge goal of ours is helping create this awesome environment that kids want to be a part of. And so what I would encourage as like a body in the state of Utah to do is do that, create a connection to your youth and, make it exciting, make it fun, and it'll have a domino effect. They'll want their buddies to be involved, and families want to be involved in programs that are doing well and that are organized. And, that's another, I think, reason why our youth has been able to grow is we have a great youth board that's really well put together and everybody has a role. It's very organized, and, parents want to be a part of that. And that helps kind of foster more and more kids coming into the sport. And I think all of those things really add up. So as a body, I think that's what my advice would be, is just getting involved with the youth and, making sure that we're helping teach the game, keeping it fun. And, and then it'll have a very lasting effect, a trickle down effect.
My last question, I think your program, Olympus, along with a couple of others in the state, Park City, Corner Canyon. You guys have been kind of the flag bearers for the state of Utah, at least since it's been sanctioned with the UHSAA, and going out and playing teams from other states. And obviously lacrosse is kind of spreading out west. But as you go and you play some of these teams, Colorado, California, et cetera, what do you see? What does lacrosse look like there? How does Utah stack up? Where can we grow to be? I don't want to say not more competitive, because you've been competitive, you've beaten some of those teams. But where does lacrosse in Utah stack up against some of the other regional teams that you guys have played?
Yeah, we were fortunate to go to Colorado this year for a 2-game swing with Cherry Creek and then Cherokee Trail. And we knew that Colorado lacrosse as a whole was a lot further ahead than Utah lacrosse, just from a depth standpoint. I think the top teams in Utah could definitely go toe-to-toe. The top 4 or 5 teams could definitely go toe-to-toe with a lot of the top 5 teams with in Colorado and definitely Idaho, Nevada, and stuff like that. But the depth, what you learn when you go on these trips is that the depth of these states is very deep. The level of play there, when we went and played Cherry Creek, the speed of the game, the physicality of the game was completely different. The way they officiate the games, they let a lot go. And so it's just a completely different game that we had to adapt to on the fly. So it was a great experience for us because it really exposed us to high level lacrosse, physical lacrosse that we had to grow up. We had to grow up a lot. The calls that you would normally feel like you'd get locally, you didn't get there. And so it was a great experience from that standpoint, being exposed to that type of officiating, that type of game. The Cherokee Trail game, it was another close game. We were fortunate to win that one, but they've lost 4 or 5 games in the state of Colorado, and they'd be right there in the mix in Utah, and it just shows the depth of programs in Colorado. So, and I think that's true outside of just Colorado and California. You have a lot of really, really good programs, and so. I think Utah's got a long ways to go to kind of get to that level. I think it's getting there. It's growing a ton. But Utah's just not there. I think, like I said, that top 5 or 6 teams, would be in that mix to play really well and be competitive. But it's the depth. It's after that sixth team where you see a big drop off. And so that's where I think Utah needs to see growth. And I think it's starting to, is there's more and more good coaches coming into the game and are taking over programs and are starting to build and get their numbers up and their the level of athlete that they're recruiting to the sport. And I think that's all really going to help the level of play in the state of Utah.
I said that was my last question, but you bring up one topic, and I just want to touch on it real quickly. So I lied.
Yeah, go ahead.
Talk about depth. Have you ever seen, again, this is in its infancy in terms of a sanctioned sport in Utah, just 4th or 5th year. Talk about the depth of Region 6 this year, because you've got Olympus, you've got Park City. Brighton has been phenomenal with what we've seen from them. Your region, it is crazy, Coach.
It is. We always thought that Region 6 was the best region top to bottom for a few years, and then you added, with the realignment this last year, you added Alta and West Jordan and West into our region. And, West Jordan's had a ton of success. They had a great hot start to the season, and Alta's been a great program coming from Region 8. So we just kind of joke that it's like, all right, if you're a good team, let's just add you to Region 6. So it's kind of had that effect a little bit, but it's so good. You have such high level coaching within our region. Chris O'Donnell's done a great job at Brighton. Obviously, Coach Persky at Park City's a great coach, and then you have Ian Syme over at Skyline and Blaney over at over at Highland. And so you just have, and Hobe over at Alta. So you have a lot of great coaches that have put a lot of time in these programs. They've been where they're at for a good amount of time, and they've had time to really kind of build it up. And Region 6 is a gauntlet, man. We're now in region play, and which is exciting. It makes it fun. Like, we don't want games where, it's going to be, a lot to a little just every single week in, week out. And that's just not exciting. That's what we're excited about with the matchup tomorrow against Brighton is high level lacrosse, and it's competitive, and it's in an environment that's like a state playoff like environment. And that's what makes it fun. That's what you live for. That's, as a competitor, that's what you want. So we're excited about, all those games.
That's just it. You want to compete, right?
Yeah. I mean, you only get so many opportunities, right? And, in our region, there's, 7. So it's like, go out and ball out, let's go out and show out, it's just another opportunity to show the state what you're about. And, in the best scene, we have a ton of support, and those schools have a ton of support. So it creates awesome environments. It's what you want to be in when you're a lacrosse player. Yeah.
Well, Coach, thank you so much. You kind of snuck it in there. We're gonna hit it hard. In case you missed it, on Wednesday, April 17th, maybe the game of the year in the early part of the season of region play here. That's Wednesday night, April 17th, 8:00. That's 1 versus 2. I mean, it's going to be a heck of a matchup. The one combined loss, and that was the game you alluded to, losing to Cherry Creek. So it's going to be a fantastic game. Coach O'Donnell probably won't like this, but I'm going to tell you the key to that game because I have seen Brighton play. I've seen you play. I really think whoever scores more is going to win. So just score more than them, and I think you have a really good shot.
I think that's good advice, Dane. I think we'll take that to note. I'll put that on the board right before the game, score more, and we'll see how that works out.
Yeah. I think that should work out well for you guys. Coach, thank you so much. We really do appreciate the time. Great to get to know you better, and appreciate all you're doing with lacrosse. You're doing a great job at Olympus, and it's awesome to see that program have such great success. Thank you for the time.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Dane.
Yeah, thank you. Coach Nick Merrell at Olympus High School.